He was just a broke student when she mocked him. Now he's her billionaire boss, and she doesn't recognize him. Before we begin this story, where are you watching from? Comment below and enjoy. Zara twirled a strand of her sleek black hair as she stared at her phone, barely listening to the nervous guy sitting across from her. Marcus adjusted his second-hand jacket, trying not to fidget. They sat on a cracked park bench, and the chill in the evening air only made his anxiety worse. He had just poured his heart out, asking her to be his girlfriend, but Zara's face stayed blank, almost bored. She was beautiful, with a fashion model's confidence, and she knew it. Marcus, on the other hand, was a final-year university student working 2 part-time jobs. He barely had enough to pay his tuition, let alone impress a girl like her. Still, he had hoped. Maybe she'd see his heart, not his wallet. But when she finally spoke, her words cut deep. "Marcus, let's be real. You're sweet, but I can't date a guy who can't even afford dinner. I need someone who knows how to live." She laughed, shaking her head like she was brushing off a silly request. Marcus blinked, hurt flashing in his eyes. He had expected a no, but not one dipped in mockery. Zara stood up, checking her reflection on her phone screen. "You'll thank me one day, Marcus. A guy like you needs to focus on money first. Love can wait." As she walked away, Marcus sat frozen, her words echoing in his mind. But deep inside, something shifted. He wasn't going to beg. He wasn't going to cry. Instead, he made a silent vow. One day, he'd be so successful that girls like Zara would regret ever turning him down. That day would come sooner than anyone expected. Marcus didn't go back to his apartment that night. He wandered the streets of the city, the cold wind slicing through his jacket, but he barely noticed it. Zara's laughter kept ringing in his ears. Her words played on a loop in his mind. "You need to focus on money first. Love can wait." It stung, but it also lit something in him. Not bitterness, but hunger. He had always known the world wasn't fair. His father had died when he was 12, and his mother worked tirelessly just to keep the lights on. He wasn't born into wealth, but he had something many didn't: grit. That rejection made him realize he had been chasing the wrong things, trying to impress people who never saw his value. That night, Marcus made a decision. He would stop living like life owed him something. He would stop dreaming small. He returned to his small apartment at dawn and tore up his vision board. Then he started building a new one, not with pictures of fancy cars or mansions, but with goals. Real, measurable goals. He would finish school, start a business, and create a life where he didn't have to beg for anyone's approval. Over the next few months, Marcus barely slept. He studied hard, worked longer hours, and saved every penny. While others were partying or scrolling through social media, Marcus was learning about investments, tech trends, and reading every business book he could get his hands on. He didn't speak to Zara again. She had become just a memory, a turning point, a reminder. He wasn't angry at her anymore. In fact, he was thankful. Her rejection had sparked a fire in him, a fire that was just getting started. Graduation day arrived like a storm, fast and full of emotion. Students in crisp gowns and proud parents filled the university hall, their laughter and chatter bouncing off the walls. Marcus stood quietly at the back, diploma in hand, wearing a well-worn suit he'd bought second-hand but pressed to perfection. He wasn't interested in the celebration. For him, this was just a checkpoint. As names were called out, he spotted Zara across the hall. She was surrounded by friends, laughing loudly, taking endless selfies. She looked just like she always had. Beautiful, confident, untouchable. Marcus watched her for a moment, not with longing, but with a calm detachment. She hadn't changed, but he had. After the ceremony, he slipped away quietly. While others rushed to take pictures or attend after-parties, Marcus had other plans. He had already booked a one-way flight to London. A tech company there had offered him a spot in their Young Innovators program after he submitted a groundbreaking app idea. It wasn't a job, it was an opportunity to build something bigger. He visited his mother that evening, hugged her tight, and promised to take care of her soon. She looked at him with tears in her eyes. "You always make me proud, Marcus." That night, as his plane lifted off the ground, Marcus stared out of the window, the city lights shrinking below. He smiled softly. The old life was behind him now. No more chasing people. No more proving himself to anyone. He had a new mission. Grow, build, win. And one day, return. Not as the broke student everyone ignored, but as a man who made it against the odds. London was cold, fast-paced, and unforgiving, but Marcus loved every second of it. The city breathed ambition, and he inhaled it deeply. The Young Innovators program was intense. Days turned into nights filled with code, meetings, and business pitches, but Marcus thrived under pressure. Unlike the others, he wasn't just chasing success, he was building it from the ground up. He lived in a small shared flat with peeling wallpaper and noisy neighbors, but he didn't complain. Every inconvenience was temporary, every sleepless night was an investment. While others were focused on the next paycheck, Marcus was building his app, QuickLink, a business communication platform designed to simplify team workflow for startups and small businesses. At first, no one paid attention. Investors ignored his emails. Some even laughed at his ideas during pitch sessions. But Marcus didn't stop. He refined the app, took feedback, and kept showing up. Eventually, one small investor took a chance on him, offering him just enough funding to hire a small team. That was all Marcus needed. Within a year, QuickLink exploded in popularity among tech startups. Word spread like wildfire, and soon larger firms began using it. Marcus reinvested every cent into improving the app, marketing smartly, and growing his brand. His name started appearing in industry blogs and startup magazines. But Marcus didn't celebrate. Not yet. He wasn't where he wanted to be. Not until he built something unshakable. At night, he'd still remember that park bench. Zara's laughter, the sting of rejection. Not because he wanted revenge, but because that memory reminded him to stay hungry, stay focused. He wasn't the broke boy anymore. He was becoming someone powerful, and the world was beginning to notice. 2 years later, Marcus stood in front of a tall glass window in his new high-rise apartment, sipping black coffee as the city lights of London sparkled behind him. He wore a tailored grey suit, custom-made in Milan. His watch alone could pay 6 months' rent on his first London flat. The boy who once couldn't afford dinner was now a millionaire. QuickLink had gone global. Investors were practically begging to be part of the next update. Tech conferences invited Marcus as a keynote speaker. Business schools used his journey as a case study for resilience and smart innovation. But Marcus remained calm through it all. Fame wasn't the goal. Legacy was. He hired a small but loyal team, many of them young, underprivileged talents like himself. He gave them chances no one gave him. He funded scholarships. He donated to startups that just needed a first chance, just like he once did. One evening, as he prepared for an upcoming conference in New York, Marcus paused to look at himself in the mirror. The sharp jawline, fresh haircut, and quiet confidence in his eyes weren't new, but now they matched his reality. He had become the man he used to dream of. Still, something tugged at him, a quiet thought. He had accomplished everything he once set out to prove, but not everyone who once doubted him knew. Not yet. A few days later, his assistant walked into the office with a smirk. "Boss, there's a company in Nigeria requesting a collaboration deal. Mid-size marketing firm, they're growing fast. CEO's name is Zara Olamide." Marcus blinked. For the first time in years, he smiled, not out of pride, but curiosity. Fate, it seemed, was finally ready for the second round. Marcus sat at his glass desk, reading the email again. Zara Olamide. There it was. Her name, bold and confident, just like he remembered. The email was professional, polite, and clearly unaware of who she was addressing. Her company, Zara Creatives, was expanding and seeking collaboration with international tech firms for a campaign. The irony made him lean back in his chair and chuckle softly. Of all the CEOs in Nigeria, it had to be her. The girl who once told him he wasn't good enough because he was broke, now wanted to partner with the man she never imagined he'd become. He stared at the screen for a moment, fingers hovering over the keyboard. A part of him wanted to ignore the email, move on, but another part, the bold, strategic part, knew this was an opportunity. Not for revenge, but for revelation. He clicked reply. "Dear Miss Olamide, thank you for reaching out. Your proposal is interesting. I would be open to discussing a potential partnership. I'll be in Lagos next week for business. Let's schedule a meeting. Best regards. Marcus A. Cole, CEO, QuickLink Technologies." After hitting send, Marcus sat back again, watching the London skyline shift under the setting sun. He didn't feel anger, not even satisfaction, just a strange sense of closure beginning to unfold. He didn't need Zara's approval anymore, but a part of him wondered, did she remember him at all, or had she completely forgotten the boy she once rejected on that cold bench, not knowing that boy would one day become the boss she'd be meeting soon? One thing was certain, their next meeting wouldn't be anything like the first. The private jet hummed softly as it soared above the clouds, but Marcus wasn't paying attention to the luxury surrounding him. His mind was focused, sharp. He had flown on dozens of business trips before, but this one felt different. This time, he was returning not just to Nigeria, but to his past. He had requested a full background report on Zara Creatives before boarding. The company was doing well. Not exceptional, but solid. Zara had clearly worked hard. She specialized in digital marketing, branding, and media campaigns. Her portfolio included major local clients and a few rising international names. She was building something, but now she needed someone bigger to take her company to the next level. Someone like him. Marcus closed the folder and stared out the window. Lagos had always been a city of dreams and disappointments. It was where he had once begged for chances, where he had been told to his face that he wasn't enough. But now he was coming back with a team, a fleet of luxury vehicles waiting at the airport, and meetings booked with some of the country's top investors and CEOs. He was no longer the broke student. He was the man people rushed to impress. His assistant leaned in. "Sir, Zara confirmed the meeting, Friday 10 a.m. at her company's headquarters in Lekki." Marcus nodded, a calm smile forming. "Perfect. Make sure the driver knows I want to arrive exactly on time, not a second earlier." As the plane dipped toward Murtala Mohammed Airport, Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Curiosity. Not about the deal, but about her. What kind of woman had she become? And more importantly, would she recognize the man she once laughed at? Zara stood in front of the mirror in her office, smoothing down her emerald green blazer. Today was a big day. The CEO of QuickLink Technologies, one of the fastest growing tech firms in Europe, was coming to meet her. She'd worked hard to secure this meeting. Her company needed this collaboration to break into the international market. She didn't know much about the man, Marcus A. Carl, but the name sounded vaguely familiar. Still, she brushed it off. In her world, she met dozens of people every month. What mattered now was closing this deal. At exactly 10 a.m., her receptionist buzzed her. "Ma'am, Mr. Cole is here." Zara quickly composed herself. "Send him in." The office door opened, and in walked a tall, confident man in a dark navy suit that looked like it belonged on the cover of a business magazine. His steps were calm, precise. His presence filled the room before he even spoke. Zara rose to her feet, her business smile ready. "Good morning, mister." She froze. Her mouth parted slightly, but no words came out. The eyes, that jawline, that quiet, intense gaze. "Marcus," she whispered, almost unsure. Marcus gave a polite smile, his voice smooth. "Good morning, Ms. Oldmaid. It's a pleasure to meet you." Zara stared at him, completely thrown off. This couldn't be the same Marcus, the broke boy she rejected years ago, the one in cheap clothes and worn-out shoes. He looked like power, like success, like everything she never thought he could become. She quickly collected herself, forcing a smile. "Please, have a seat." As he sat down, Marcus leaned back slightly, eyes never leaving hers. He had one clear advantage now: control. And she was just beginning to realize it. Zara struggled to stay composed. Her heart raced, and her fingers tightened slightly around her pen. She had always been confident in meetings, but not today. Not with him sitting across from her. Marcus looked at ease, leaning back with that unreadable expression. He hadn't even mentioned their past, which made it worse. The silence held more power than words. She cleared her throat and began the pitch. "At Zara Creatives, we specialize in..." Marcus listened silently. His face was calm, polite, but his eyes watched her closely. Not just her words, but the shift in her tone, the slight stutter when she first realized who he was. He could tell she was trying to stay professional, but her confidence had cracked. Zara continued, showing slides on her tablet and explaining how a partnership with QuickLink could benefit both companies. She was good, he had to admit that, sharp, articulate, and clearly passionate. But he also saw the irony. A few years ago, she wouldn't even sit through a conversation with him. Now she was trying to impress him. When she finished, There was a brief silence. Marcus folded his hands. "You've done well for yourself." She smiled faintly. "Thank you. I've worked really hard." He leaned forward slightly. "So have I." Zara looked at him, searching his face. He wasn't gloating. He wasn't mocking her. That somehow made it worse. "I had no idea it was you, Marcus. I mean, when I sent the email—" "I know," he said simply. The room fell quiet again. There was no need to dig up the past, but it was already sitting between them. Marcus finally stood. "I'll think about the proposal. You'll get my answer soon." And with that he walked out, leaving Zara with a racing heart and a mind full of regrets. Zara sat frozen at her desk long after Marcus had left. Her team knocked gently before entering, expecting a rundown of how the meeting went. She managed a quick smile and waved them off with a vague, "It went fine," but inside her thoughts were in chaos. She couldn't concentrate on work. Everything she had buried in her memory came rushing back like a flood. Marcus sitting on that park bench years ago, nervous and hopeful, her laughter, her cruel words, and now he had returned not just successful, but powerful. Why didn't he say anything? She whispered to herself, pacing her office. Why didn't he mention what happened? Because he didn't need to. That's what made it worse. Marcus didn't return for revenge. He returned as a man who didn't even need her validation. And that realization stung more than any insult. Across the city, Marcus sat in the backseat of a black SUV, scrolling through his calendar. His assistant sat beside him. "She's nervous," the assistant said with a grin. Marcus didn't respond. He wasn't interested in making her feel bad. He was weighing the proposal seriously. From a business angle, Zara Creatives had potential, but from a personal standpoint, he wasn't sure if mixing past emotions with business was wise. By the time he returned to his hotel, a message from Zara was waiting. "Thank you for today. I hope we can work together professionally. I also hope we can talk just as old friends. I owe you that." Marcus stared at the message. He didn't reply, not yet. For the first time, she wanted to know the man he'd become. But Marcus wasn't sure if he was ready to let her in. Not again. That night, Zara sat on her balcony with a glass of wine, staring out at the city lights. Lagos buzzed with life, but her mind was quiet and restless. She kept replaying Marcus's expression in her office, calm, unreadable, detached. He hadn't mocked her, hadn't even reminded her of what she'd said all those years ago. But somehow that made it hurt even more. She remembered that day so clearly now, the park, the way he'd looked at her, hopeful, honest, and the way she'd laughed. Back then she'd thought she was being honest. She believed money mattered more than anything, but now? She wasn't so sure. Her phone buzzed. She grabbed it quickly, hoping it was Marcus, but it wasn't. Just another business email. She sighed. Across town, Marcus lay on the hotel bed, scrolling through the message from Zara again. He hadn't replied, and he didn't know if he should. A part of him wanted to close that door for good, but another part, one that remembered how much he once cared, was curious. Not because he still loved her, that feeling had long died, but because she had been the turning point in his life, and now she wanted to talk like old friends. His assistant knocked lightly. "Tomorrow's meeting with the tech investors is confirmed, sir," and Zara's office followed up again. He nodded. "All right, push the investor meeting to the afternoon. I'll meet Zara first." The assistant raised a brow. "Are you sure?" Marcus gave a faint smile. "I'm not doing it for her. I'm doing it for me." He needed to hear what she had to say, not for closure, but to finally see if the past could sit across from him without power. This time, he wasn't the one seeking approval. The next morning, Zara arrived early at the quiet cafe Marcus had chosen, an upscale spot tucked away from the noisy streets of Victoria Island. She wore a soft beige dress, elegant but modest, her makeup subtle. She wasn't here to impress him, she was here to be real. Marcus arrived minutes later, dressed in a fitted black shirt and trousers. He looked calm as ever, but there was a sharpness in his eyes that made her sit up straighter. He offered a polite nod and took his seat. "Thanks for coming," she said softly. He nodded. "I had a gap in my schedule." There was a brief pause. She stirred her tea, even though she wasn't adding anything to it. Then she exhaled. "I owe you an apology. For what I said back then. For laughing at you. For making you feel small." Marcus looked at her. His expression didn't change. I don't need the apology, Zara. That moment made me stronger. She blinked, caught off guard, but I still needed to say it. I was young, foolish, chasing shallow things. You didn't deserve that. He leaned back, his voice low. Maybe not. But it was the truth I needed. I thought you were cruel that day. But looking back, you were honest about what mattered to you. Zara swallowed. That version of me. I don't even like her anymore. A long pause followed. She looked at him again. You've changed. Marcus nodded. So have you. There was no bitterness in his voice, just acceptance. Zara hesitated, then asked, Do you think we could ever be friends? Marcus looked down at his coffee, then back at her. Let's start with business, we'll see about the rest. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no either, and somehow that gave her hope. The meeting ended on a neutral note. Zara watched as Marcus walked away once again, calm and unreadable. She couldn't tell if he had forgiven her, or if he was simply too successful to care anymore. Either way, he'd left her with a glimmer of something she hadn't expected: hope. Back at Zara Creatives, her team gathered for updates. She stood at the head of the table, professional and composed. I had a second meeting with Mr. Cole this morning. He's reviewing our proposal and will get back to us soon. Will he accept? One of her team members asked. Zara hesitated, then nodded. I think there's a chance. Meanwhile, Marcus returned to his hotel suite, flipping through documents. His mind drifted briefly back to the cafe conversation. Zara's apology had been genuine, and yet he couldn't shake the feeling that her remorse was more about guilt than affection. He picked up her proposal again. From a business standpoint, it was solid. Her company had talent, a strong creative team, and the potential to expand. His involvement could give her the international push she needed. His assistant entered with updates. Sir, the US investors have offered a larger deal if you partner with their media firm instead. You'd still reach the African market, but without the sentimental connection. Marcus thought for a moment. Then he said, Set a final meeting with Zara's team tomorrow. I want to see how she handles pressure. He wasn't going to let emotions dictate business. Not now. But if Zara's team could prove themselves without relying on personal history, maybe, just maybe, he'd give her company a chance. This wasn't about second chances in love, this was about business, and Marcus didn't mix the two easily. The next morning, Zara walked into the boardroom of Zara Creatives dressed in a crisp white suit. She looked calm on the outside, but her nerves were at war. Today wasn't just about saving a deal, it was about proving herself. Not as the girl who once rejected Marcus, but as the CEO of a company worth investing in. Her team sat around the table, prepared and rehearsed. Laptops were open, presentation slides ready, and talking points memorized. Still, the energy in the room shifted the moment Marcus walked in. He entered with quiet authority, followed by two members of his QuickLink executive team. He nodded a greeting, took his seat at the head of the table, and got straight to the point. I'm here to see how you handle challenges. If we partner, we need to know you're ready for expansion, international pressure, rapid scaling, and higher expectations. Zara nodded firmly. We've prepared a revised proposal that addresses your earlier concerns. For the next 45 minutes, her team presented everything: updated marketing strategies, restructured campaigns, projected growth, and international branding plans. They were professional, sharp, and confident. And for the first time, Marcus saw more than just Zara's ambition. He saw leadership. When the presentation ended, Marcus sat quietly. He tapped his pen against the table, then finally spoke. You've improved the proposal. The vision is clear. The execution looks promising. Zara held her breath. But, he continued, this time looking directly at her, I don't invest in people who are only good when things are easy. I want to know what happens when your back is against the wall. Zara's jaw tightened slightly. Then she said, I've failed before. I've made mistakes, but I've never stopped building. I'm still here, and I'm not afraid to grow beyond who I used to be. Marcus leaned back. That was the answer he needed. He didn't smile, but he did nod. That's all for today. You'll have my decision soon. And with that, he stood, leaving behind a room filled with silent hope. The sun was setting over Lagos, casting golden streaks through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Marcus's hotel suite. He sat in his armchair, the proposal file from Zara Creatives open on the table in front of him. A cup of untouched tea sat beside it, growing cold. He'd reviewed the numbers again and again. He wasn't just looking at profits. He was weighing trust, leadership, growth, and most of all, consistency. Zara's team had impressed him, no doubt. Their proposal had gone from decent to dynamic, but business wasn't about one good presentation. It was about long-term resilience. His phone buzzed, a message from his assistant. Reminder, US media firm deadline expires in 12 hours. He exhaled, closing his eyes. He could easily go with the American firm. Bigger reach, higher profits, no emotional ties. But something about Zara's company kept tugging at his focus. Later that night, he walked out to the hotel balcony, staring at the city skyline. He remembered walking these streets, broke and uncertain, hungry but hopeful. Back then, no one believed in him, not even Zara. Now the tables had turned, and he had a choice to make. By 10 p.m., he picked up his phone and typed a short message. Zara, I've reviewed the final proposal. I'm willing to move forward with the partnership. My legal team will contact yours in the morning to finalize terms. He stared at the message, his thumb hovering, then almost without thinking he added, "And for the record, you handled today well." Then he hit send. Across the city, Zara's phone buzzed as she sat alone in her apartment, scrolling through campaign reports. She opened the message, and when she read it, her hand flew to her mouth. She had expected a long wait. She hadn't expected that. For the first time in years, she smiled. Not because of who Marcus had become, but because of the woman she was becoming too. Zara walked into her office the next morning to find her entire team buzzing with excitement. The moment she stepped in, her assistant rushed over, grinning from ear to ear. "Ma'am, Mr. Cole's legal team sent over the official partnership documents. It's happening." Zara froze for just a moment, heart racing. She had seen his message the night before, read it twice, then a third time, but now it was real. Her company was about to partner with QuickLink Technologies. A global name, her name, Zara Olamide, would now be attached to something much bigger. She composed herself quickly. "All right, schedule a signing meeting." And inform the PR team, "We're about to go international." Her staff erupted in cheers. She smiled, but her mind was racing. Not with nerves, but with purpose. This partnership wasn't just a win, it was the start of a transformation. Across town, Marcus was already reviewing new campaign schedules with his legal and PR team. His assistant turned to him. "That message you sent Zara. Unexpected." Marcus looked up. "Business doesn't mean we have to be cold. She earned the deal. She needed to know that." He didn't regret the decision. Zara had built something from nothing, just like he had. Maybe they weren't so different after all. Later that day, they met at a luxury conference room to sign the official partnership documents. Cameras clicked, hands were shaken, and contracts exchanged. "Congratulations," Marcus said as he offered his hand. Zara took it. "Thank you for the opportunity and the trust." Marcus nodded. "We start work next week. Be ready." "Always," she replied. As they posed for photos together, smiles wide for the press, only they knew the full weight of what had passed between them. They weren't the same people anymore, and this time they were building together. The partnership between QuickLink Technologies and Zara Creatives made headlines across Nigeria and beyond. Social media buzzed with photos of Marcus and Zara shaking hands, both dressed in sleek business attire, looking like a power duo from a Fortune 500 magazine spread. But behind the cameras and press releases, a new dynamic was forming. Their companies began working closely, team meetings, strategy sessions, product planning. Marcus and Zara found themselves constantly in the same rooms, the same calls, the same board tables. At first, it was strictly professional. Zara kept things efficient, focusing on deliverables. Marcus, ever calm and analytical, pushed the teams hard, setting high expectations. But with each passing day, something started to shift. They began to understand each other. Their work styles complemented surprisingly well. Her creativity balanced his structure. Her emotional intelligence softened his calculated strategies. His attention to detail challenged her to be sharper. One evening, after a particularly long meeting, they ended up alone in the conference room. Zara was packing her files when Marcus spoke up. "You've come a long way." She looked up, caught off guard. "From where?" "From that day in the park." Zara paused, then smiled gently. "So have you." He chuckled softly. I had no choice. She looked at him, curious. Do you ever wish things had gone differently between us? Back then? Marcus met her eyes. No. If they had, maybe I wouldn't be who I am now. Silence fell between them, warm, reflective, not uncomfortable. Zara nodded slowly. I used to think success meant never looking back, but I've learned, sometimes it's looking back that shows how far you've come. He smiled. Maybe. Just don't stare too long. You might miss what's ahead. They didn't say anything else that night, but something unspoken passed between them. The past had shaped them, the present was connecting them. And the future? That part was still being written. As the weeks rolled by, the partnership flourished. Campaigns were rolling out, press coverage was glowing, and both companies were gaining new clients. On paper, everything was perfect, but behind closed doors, the line between personal and professional was starting to blur. Marcus began noticing it in the small things. How Zara would linger after meetings, how their conversations drifted from business into memories, how she laughed more freely around him now. It wasn't the same laughter from the park bench years ago, it was softer, warmer. Zara, on the other hand, found herself drawn to Marcus in ways she didn't expect. He was no longer just the man she once heard. He was powerful, confident, yet still carried the same grounded heart she had ignored back then. Watching him work, lead, and interact with people stirred something she couldn't deny. One afternoon, they were invited to speak at a tech conference as joint keynote speakers. The audience was packed with young entrepreneurs. Marcus spoke first, sharp, insightful, inspiring, then Zara took the stage, charming and magnetic. The crowd loved them both, but what everyone noticed most was the chemistry, not just as business partners, but something deeper. Afterward, they walked side by side through the hotel lobby. You killed it on stage, Zara said, nudging him playfully. So did you. I see why your brand's growing. You've got presence. She smiled, then stopped walking. You know, Marcus, people keep asking me if we're a couple. He raised an eyebrow. What do you tell them? That we're not, yet. Marcus looked at her, silent. Zara quickly added, I'm joking, unless. He didn't laugh. He just looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, Let's not mix feelings with deals, Zara. We've got too much riding on this. She nodded, forcing a smile. Of course. But as they went their separate ways that night, neither could ignore the quiet tension hanging in the air. They were building an empire. But were they building something else too? The following week things felt different, subtle, unspoken, but different. Zara and Marcus continued leading their teams with the same focus, the same energy, but under the surface something else was brewing. Zara found herself second-guessing things she once did without hesitation. Should she text Marcus after hours about a campaign idea? Should she call him by his first name in front of others, or keep it formal? And Marcus, who never mixed business with personal matters, started noticing her more than he intended, the way she spoke in meetings, the way her eyes lit up when a project went well. It was becoming harder to pretend the tension didn't exist. One late evening, Marcus was working alone in the office when Zara knocked gently and stepped in, holding 2 takeaway boxes. You haven't eaten. Neither have I. Thought I'd bring dinner. He looked up, surprised. You didn't have to. I know, she said, placing the food on his desk, but I wanted to. They ate in silence for a while, the only sound coming from the quiet hum of the air conditioning. Then Zara spoke, her voice softer than usual. You're different now, but not cold, just guarded. Marcus looked at her. I learned to protect myself. She nodded slowly. Do you ever let people in? He paused, then replied, not often, and definitely not easily. Zara set her fork down. You know, when I saw you again for the first time, I didn't recognize you, but the more time we spend together, the more I see the same person, just evolved. Marcus studied her. And what do you see now? She smiled gently. Someone I wish I hadn't pushed away. He didn't respond, but he didn't look away either. The meal ended quietly, both of them lost in thought. The walls they had built were still there, but slowly they were cracking. The next day brought an unexpected surprise. Zara's team had arranged a press brunch to celebrate the official launch of their first collaborative campaign with QuickLink. The guest list included major investors, social media influencers, and former classmates from university. As Zara walked into the event dressed in a sleek navy mule dress, she felt confident, until she saw them, three of her old university friends huddled near the drink table, whispering as Marcus entered behind her. One of them, Tenny, caught Zara's eye and walked over, her curiosity practically glowing. "Zara, is that Marcus Cole?" "The Marcus Cole." Zara smiled politely. "Yes, we're partners now." Tenny laughed. "Partners? As in? Business or more?" Zara forced a chuckle. "Just business. For now." But Tenny leaned in, lowering her voice. "Wow, he looks amazing. I remember when we used to laugh at how obsessed he was with you. Life really does turn tables, doesn't it?" Zara's smile faded. The words stung, even though she knew they weren't meant to. She turned to glance at Marcus, who was deep in conversation with a top investor, calm and composed. Later that evening, as the event was winding down, Zara found herself beside Marcus on the terrace. She sighed. Today was interesting. He looked at her, eyebrow raised. "I saw the group of your friends." She groaned. "Yeah, they remember everything, unfortunately." He chuckled. "That day at the park used to haunt me. Now, it's just a story I no longer feel." Zara looked at him quietly. "I still feel it. Not with shame, but with the weight of what I didn't see then." Marcus turned to her, voice low. "We were two different people back then. Now, you're not the same girl, and I'm not the same boy." Their eyes met. This time, there was no awkwardness, just an understanding. The past was no longer a burden, it had become a bridge. And maybe, just maybe, they were ready to cross it together. The following Monday brought more than just back-to-back meetings. A blog post titled, "From Rejection to Romance," the Zara and Marcus story began making waves across business and lifestyle websites. It included old university pictures of Marcus, looking nothing like the polished CEO he was today, and one particular quote from a source claiming Zara once rejected him publicly for being broke. The internet did what it does best: speculated, exaggerated, and exploded. Zara saw the post while sipping coffee at her desk. Her heart sank. Moments later, her phone buzzed. It was Marcus. "You've seen the article?" "Let's meet. Now." 20 minutes later, they sat across from each other in his office. Zara looked uneasy, flipping her phone over on the table. "I didn't say anything to the press," she started. "I swear." "I believe you," Marcus said calmly. "But this could affect both our brands if we don't manage it quickly." She nodded. "Should we release a joint statement, deny everything?" Marcus leaned back. "No, we don't deny the past. We shape the narrative." Zara looked at him curiously. "What do you mean?" "We tell the truth, on our terms, that we knew each other in university, that we weren't close, that now, years later, through hard work and growth, we found mutual respect." Zara blinked. "That's surprisingly gracious." He gave her a faint smile. "I don't need to prove anything anymore, but maybe we can teach people something bigger, about second chances and growth." She looked at him differently in that moment. He wasn't just successful, he was mature, grounded, wise, the kind of man she hadn't known she needed. "All right," she said softly, "let's tell our story together." The storm outside was building, but inside that office, something powerful was settling between them. Respect, redemption, and something that felt a lot like the beginning of love. A week later, the media buzz hadn't slowed down, and the pressure on both brands was growing. Speculation, fan theories, and online gossip were spreading faster than either of them had expected, so Marcus made the call. To control the narrative, they'd sit down for one interview. One honest, calm, and carefully planned conversation. They chose a respected business journalist with a clean reputation, someone who wouldn't twist their words. The interview would be aired on YouTube and streamed on multiple platforms. Both teams worked around the clock to prepare. When the cameras finally rolled, Zara and Marcus sat side by side on a minimal, elegant set. The journalist smiled warmly. "Let's start with the question everyone's asking. Did you two know each other in university?" Zara glanced at Marcus, then nodded. "Yes, we did. We weren't close, but we had one important conversation that stuck with us." Marcus leaned in. "She rejected me. I was broke, dreaming big and naive. She said no, harshly too. Zara's cheeks flushed slightly, but she smiled. I didn't know what kind of man he'd become, and I didn't know how much I'd regret that moment later. The interviewer nodded. And now, what's the dynamic between you two today? Marcus answered first. We're business partners. We respect each other. We've both grown. That's the real story. Zara added, the lesson isn't about romance or revenge. It's about time, growth, and the people we become when life humbles us. The interview continued, light, honest, and surprisingly vulnerable, and when it aired, it went viral, not for drama but for its maturity, for its truth. People across the world praised their honesty, their professionalism, and the way they navigated something messy with class. Zara's inbox filled with brand offers. Marcus's stock rose even higher in the tech world. And quietly, in the background, something more personal began to bloom. Not just respect, not just closure, but maybe a second chance neither of them saw coming. After the interview aired, everything changed. The noise of the rumors faded, replaced by admiration. Clients flooded in, investors praised their leadership, and followers on social media hailed their story as a masterclass in humility and growth. But beneath the professional glow, something deeper was shifting, especially between Marcus and Zara. They started spending more time together, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Meetings flowed into long conversations. Business dinners turned into casual talks about life, family, and childhood dreams. The tension that once sat awkwardly between them was now a quiet comfort. One night, after a successful campaign launch event, Marcus and Zara found themselves walking side by side in the hotel garden where the celebration had been held. The stars were out, and the music from inside had faded into a soft hum. Zara looked up at the sky. I used to think success would fix everything, that it would make me feel complete. Does it? Marcus asked gently. She shook her head. No, it just teaches you what really matters. He nodded, understanding. I chased success to prove something, but the higher I climbed, the more I realized peace is the real prize. They walked in silence for a while, then Zara turned to him. Do you ever think about what could have happened between us if things had been different? Marcus looked at her for a long time before answering. I used to, but now I think about what can happen, now that we're different. Zara's breath caught for a second. And what do you see? He stepped a little closer. I see possibility, but only if we stop looking back. Their eyes met. No regrets, no bitterness. Just two people who had journeyed through time, pain, and growth to meet again, not as who they were, but as who they had become. And maybe, just maybe, it was finally the right time. The days that followed felt different, lighter, yet full of silent anticipation. Marcus and Zara didn't label anything. They didn't rush, but there was a new rhythm between them now. Lingering eye contact, smiles that lasted a little longer, conversations that dipped into places neither had dared to explore before. One evening, after a long day of strategy meetings and filming a brand commercial together, Marcus offered to drive Zara home. She hesitated only for a moment before accepting. In the car, the city lights blurred outside the window, and the soft hum of music filled the quiet space. For once, they weren't discussing business. They talked about childhood memories, his love for books, her obsession with old movies, and the dreams they once had before life grew loud. When they reached her apartment, Zara turned to him, unsure whether to say goodbye or something more. Thanks for the ride, she said softly. Marcus didn't reach for the door. He simply looked at her. I know we said we wouldn't mix business with feelings. She held his gaze. But feelings are already here, aren't they? He nodded. I just didn't want to mess this up. What we've built. Zara smiled, her voice barely above a whisper. Then let's build slowly, carefully, but honestly. There was a pause, and then, without saying a word, Marcus reached for her hand. Not in a rush, not with pressure, but with quiet intention. She took it, and for a moment they just sat there, hands clasped, the world outside forgotten. It wasn't a grand confession, no dramatic kiss, just the soft beginning of something real. A connection finally finding its time. Love, not rushed, not forced. Just unfolding naturally. The change between them was subtle, but undeniable. Marcus and Zara still worked like a well-oiled machine, meetings, deadlines, strategies, but in between those moments, something delicate grew. A brush of his hand as they passed each other in the hallway, a knowing glance across a crowded boardroom, late-night phone calls that started about projects but ended with them laughing until midnight. Their teams noticed it too. Whispers floated through both offices. No one dared speak it aloud, but everyone felt the shift. The once strictly professional relationship was blooming into something warmer. One Friday evening, Marcus invited Zara to a private dinner. Nothing extravagant, just quiet, intimate. The rooftop of a boutique hotel with fairy lights strung overhead and a view of Lagos shimmering below. Zara arrived wearing a soft, flowing red dress. Her usual boldness had softened tonight, replaced by something calm and thoughtful. Marcus stood as she approached, his smile gentle. "Yeah. You didn't have to go all out," she said, taking in the romantic setting. "I didn't," he replied. "I just picked a place where I could finally talk to you, without suits, phones, or schedules between us." As they ate, the conversation danced from memories to future dreams. Then, as the plates were cleared and dessert untouched, Zara turned serious. "What are we doing, Marcus? I mean, what is this?" He reached across the table, taking her hand. "I don't know if I can promise perfection, but I can promise honesty, effort, patience." She searched his eyes. "Is that your way of saying you're falling for me?" He smiled, eyes softening. "I think I already did, quietly, slowly, when you stopped being the girl from the past and became the woman I never saw coming." Zara's breath caught. "Then maybe I'm falling too." There were no fireworks, just two hearts, finally whispering the truth they'd both been afraid to name. Love had arrived, gently but completely. As Marcus and Zara stepped into this new phase of their connection, the world around them didn't slow down. In fact, it sped up. Their joint campaigns were setting industry records, their story continued to trend on social media, and the press had officially dubbed them Nigeria's power pair. But the spotlight brought pressure. Every look, every comment, every time they were seen in public, even just grabbing coffee, sparked headlines, some flattering, others invasive. One morning, Marcus opened a tabloid and frowned at the headline, "From broke to boss, did Zara use love to seal the deal?" He tossed the paper aside. When Zara arrived at his office for a meeting, he showed it to her. She sighed, skimming the article. "People always need a story." "Yeah, but this one paints you as someone who used romance for success. That's not fair to you or to us." She looked at him. "Then let's control the story, Marcus, again. But this time as a couple. No secrets, no pretending." He paused, his heart pounding just slightly. "Are you sure? It's still new. We're still figuring this out." Zara stepped closer. "I don't want to hide. Not because of gossip, not because of fear. We earned where we are, both of us, together." Marcus smiled, his walls lowering. "Then we go public, but we do it our way." Later that day, they posted a joint photo on social media, not flashy, just them sitting on a park bench, the same kind, where it all began. The caption read, "From different paths, through time and growth, we found our way back." The post exploded, thousands of likes, comments full of support, and just like that, the story was no longer about rejection. It was about redemption and love, real, slow, and strong enough to stand in the light. The weeks that followed were a blend of business milestones and quiet romance. Marcus and Zara worked hard during the day, building their empires with precision, but in the evenings they let their guards down. Their once transactional relationship had evolved into something rooted in both respect and intimacy. One evening, after a long strategy meeting, Marcus surprised Zara. "I want to show you something," he said, guiding her to a sleek black SUV. "Where are we going?" she asked, curious. He smiled. "Somewhere important." "Huh?" The car pulled up to a quiet, familiar park. The same one from years ago. The park bench, old and slightly weathered, still sat beneath the tree where it all began. Zara froze. This is the place." Marcus nodded. "You laughed at me here, rejected me, and I walked away vowing to become someone who wouldn't need anyone's approval again." She swallowed hard, her voice barely a whisper. And now? Now I don't need approval. But I do want honesty. And I wanted to come back here, not to shame you or relive the past, but because this bench is where everything started. Not just my ambition, but maybe even my heart. Zara slowly sat down, staring at the ground. I was so shallow, so blind. Marcus sat beside her, brushing her hand with his. You were young. So was I. We've both changed. She looked at him, eyes full of emotion. If I'd said yes that day, we might have crashed. We weren't ready. He smiled. Exactly. But look at us now. They sat in silence for a moment, the night breeze soft around them, the past no longer heavy. Zara leaned her head on his shoulder. It all came full circle, not to remind them of the pain, but to show them just how far they'd come, from rejection to reunion, from two strangers to something much more. And this time, it wasn't ending on a bench. It was just beginning. Days turned into weeks, and Marcus and Zara continued to grow, individually, professionally, and most of all, together. Their companies thrived under the partnership, and the public admired them not just as entrepreneurs but as a couple who defied the odds. But despite the success, Marcus couldn't shake a thought that had been growing in his heart. What now? Where does this lead? He had achieved wealth, power, and love, but something was still missing. One night, after a quiet dinner at his place, Zara stood at the balcony, barefoot, sipping tea as the city lights shimmered beneath them. Marcus watched her silently. The girl who once laughed at his ambition was now the woman who stood beside him, not out of guilt, not for gain, but with genuine admiration. She turned to him, her eyes reflecting the night. You're staring. Because I'm thinking, he said, walking toward her. About everything, about how life brought us back around. She placed her cup down and smiled. I think about it too, a lot. Marcus took her hands in his. Zara, I never thought we'd end up here, not after that day. But now that we are, I don't want this to be temporary. She tilted her head. What are you saying? He took a breath. I'm saying I want a life with you, beyond deals, beyond headlines, not rushed but real, a home, a future. I love you, Zara. Her breath caught, tears rushing to her eyes before she could stop them. And I love you, Marcus. I think I've loved you since the moment you came back into that boardroom and didn't look at me with hate. He smiled, pulling her into a quiet, heartfelt embrace. No grand speeches, no staged moments, just two hearts speaking louder than they ever had. In that moment there were no ghosts of the past, just the promise of everything that lay ahead. Weeks later, Marcus found himself standing alone in his penthouse, holding a small velvet box in his hand. The diamond inside wasn't just expensive, it was intentional, elegant, timeless, like her. He had replayed the moment in his mind 1,000 times. He didn't want it to be public. He didn't want cameras or noise. Just her and the truth of what they had become. So he planned something quiet, thoughtful. He invited Zara to dinner at the same rooftop where they'd once defined the line between friendship and something more. The fairy lights were still there, now dimmed just enough to feel like home. A small table waited with her favorite meal, her favorite flowers in a vase. When she arrived, dressed in soft gold and smiling like the entire city didn't already know her name, Marcus stood up and held out his hand. What's all this? She asked, playfully, suspicious. Something I should have said a long time ago. After dinner, he walked her to the edge of the rooftop, where the city glowed beneath them. He took a deep breath, then turned to her. Zara, you saw the broken version of me once, and you didn't choose me then. But now you've seen the whole man, his flaws, his growth, his heart, and still you stayed. She blinked, eyes already glassy. He knelt down slowly, revealing the ring. So now, I'm asking you to choose me for real, not out of guilt, not out of second chances, but because you believe in what we can build from here. Zara covered her mouth, tears spilling freely now. Yes, yes, Marcus, 1,000 times yes. He stood, slipping the ring onto her finger, then pulling her into a deep, quiet embrace. This time there was no rejection, no regret. Just love, chosen, cherished, and ready to last. The wedding was simple, elegant, and filled with meaning, not a grand celebrity affair, but a heartfelt celebration of growth, grace, and redemption. Held in a beautiful garden just outside Lagos, It was attended by close friends, family, and the loyal teams who had watched Marcus and Zara's story unfold in real time. Zara walked down the aisle in a gown of soft ivory silk, no veil, just a radiant smile and eyes fixed on the man who once sat on a park bench, broken but full of hope. Marcus, dressed in a custom black tuxedo, couldn't take his eyes off her. As she reached him, he whispered, "This is better than anything I ever dreamed of." She grinned. "Even better than revenge?" He laughed softly. "Not revenge, redemption, and love." The vows they exchanged were raw and real. "Zara, I once looked past you, not seeing the man you were becoming. But today, I see you fully. And I choose you, not for what you've achieved, but for who you are, resilient, kind, and fiercely loyal." Marcus, you once challenged me without even knowing it. You lit a fire in me that never died. But now, I don't burn to prove myself. I burn to protect this love, this partnership, and the life we're building together. When the ceremony ended, the applause was thunderous, but their world had shrunk to two people, two hearts that had traveled years, pain and pride, to find their rhythm. In the months that followed, they continued building not just business empires, but a foundation for their future. They launched a scholarship fund for underprivileged entrepreneurs called the Bench Project, inspired by the place where it all began. Their story became more than a viral headline, it became a legacy. Proof that love, when rooted in growth, forgiveness, and timing, can bloom even after rejection. And this time, forever really meant forever. If you enjoyed this story, please don't forget to hit the like button, comment your favorite part, and subscribe for more amazing stories. Your support helps us keep bringing you new adventures every week. Thanks for watching.